I hope that you've all had a chance to review some of the incredible exhibit that our Heritage Committee helped put together. And I'd like to give them a round of applause, if you don't mind. The Heritage Committee was headed by Rusty Ward, and the rest of the committee members are listed in your program. I also want to thank Andy Much, the president of Golf Curator, Inc. Andy is a neighbor of ours on Golf Course Road, and it's his business to curate club artifacts like you see, and he did most of the stuff that's in the frames in there is his work, and he did all that for us for nothing. He couldn't be here this evening because he's doing an installation at Riviera, which isn't a bad place to be, but I want to thank him for his work. I want to thank Clark McKenzie, who I saw a minute ago. Clark, I want to thank you and your staff for helping put together the program this evening. And I want to make a special thank you to Arthur Worthington. Arthur, as you'll see in your program, is a member of the Golf Committee and the Heritage Committee. And we've been talking about doing an irrigation system for a long time because ours is old and out of date and needs to be replaced. And it wasn't until Arthur became a member of the Golf Committee that he brought to our attention, shouldn't we have a master plan before we do something like that? He did a ton of research. He got all the aerial photos. He got documents from the Robert Trent Jones archives. And he made a presentation and convinced the board that it was the right thing to do, and it absolutely was. So he also played an integral part in the search committee that selected Mr. Ray to my left here, who will be doing most of the speaking here momentarily. And I want, we have a little token of appreciation for you, Arthur. Where are you? Thank you so much. So let's get down to business. I want to introduce Tyler Ray, who was selected after a search, a nationwide search and an interview process that was rather lengthy. His credentials are in the program, so I'm not going to repeat them. I will say I had an opportunity to work with him as did the Golf Committee, and he's been terrific to work with. And the Golf Committee is very pleased with the results of that work. And I hope that you all are as well. So he's going to come up here and give his presentation. In the meantime, please give your fellow members and Mr. Ray the courtesy of your attention, and let's try not to have side conversations while the presentation is going on. Okay, that'll only slow us down. It's disruptive, and it's really just not courteous to your fellow members or to Mr. Ray. There'll be a lot of time for that later, and we want to have as much time as possible for questions. So with that, please give a warm Green Spring Valley Hunt Club welcome to Tyler Ray.
Yep, perfect. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me tonight, and what a great crowd. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day on maybe the most beautiful day of the year. I know we would all like to be out there at this moment, but I really do appreciate it, and I'm humbled and honored to be working with a club, with such a steeped history and heritage, and what a beautiful location and surrounding. Every time I drive through here, I'm thankful to be coming to this club and to be associated with you guys. So we're going to get into a little bit about, obviously, this master plan that was created in the last couple months. I was hired in, I think, early December, and it's been an exhaustive research process trying to trace back your history and origins to see, okay, where did you all begin, and how did you begin, and what style of golf was put out there. And then, obviously, the whole evolution from 1913 to 2019. And so that's a lot of what I want to talk about. And then the other half is obviously the master plan. And and my proposals and some of my thoughts, and I'll describe some of them, and then we'll open it up for the Q&A, and you can berate me with your questions and ask me why I've removed a bunker or put in one. But with that said, my background, I started in the late 1990s, 97, working at DuPont Country Club in Wilmington, Delaware. And I was a guy like Arthur, where I lived practically at the course, and I was there every single day. And so I was a golf nut from young age, from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, we all are just diehard golfers. And so golf has pretty much been my whole life. And my wife knows it. The rest of my family knows it. And usually if I find a day like this, I'm out there, like Arthur on the golf course. But after the late 90s, I started to become a pretty half-decent golfer, and I was recruited by colleges such as Tulane, Virginia Tech, Maryland, right down the street, UPenn, Princeton, and I ended up going to University of Kentucky. And at the time, I thought I was pretty good. And I got to Kentucky, and they had J.B. Holmes as the #1 golfer. So if you know golf, J.B. Holmes has been on 3 Ryder Cups. He's won multiple tour events. He just won at Riviera, which we just mentioned before, where Andy Mutch is today. And that was 2 months ago. But he would shoot 61 and 62 in practice. And so I quickly learned that maybe I wasn't going to be a tour professional, and maybe I should look at something else. So when I was 18, I quickly pivoted and did landscape architecture, graduated with a landscape architecture degree from Kentucky. Thankfully, they honored my scholarship as long as I kept a half-decent GPA, which wasn't hard to maintain at Kentucky. So, but anyway, so I went into landscape architecture, and then I started working for a couple golf architects. I worked for Keith Foster, who did Baltimore 5 Farms. So I worked on 5 Farms in 2004 and 5, and worked on about 60 different projects with him over a couple year span. And then I got in the field with Core and Crenshaw and built Dormy Club in Pinehurst. And Core and Crenshaw right now, Bandon Dunes, Bandon Trails at Bandon Dunes, Pinehurst #2. Some of their work is at the apex of the industry. So I've had a really good backbone. And then 2010, 2011, I joined a gentleman named Ron Pritchard, based out of Philadelphia. And some of his most famous work was Aronimink in 2000, Charlotte Country Club, Skokie, 11 top 100s in the Golf Week when I joined him. Some have fallen out, some have come back in, but he is now at an older age where I'm slowly taking over his business, his book of business. In the meanwhile, he's been kind enough to allow me to strike out on my own in the last 5 and 6 years. And so now I have 27 clubs like yourself on my own. I'm mid-30s now, and he's at the 80 age mark. So he's slowly toning down his workload, and he's traveling to Rome and doing things he wants to do, and he's really allowing me to spread my wings. So I've had a great foundation, and it's been a slow, methodical march, and every step has been calculated. And so I want that to resound and reiterate tonight, because everything I've done on this master plan has been a slow, methodical, calculated march. So I want that to really hone in tonight, and you maybe take that away from our presentation tonight. So with that said, I'll get into a little bit of your history. So obviously 1913, this is when your club brought in Tom Bendelow, who is the director of golf course development for Spalding and Sons, the manufacturer, equipment, jerseys, all that. They were the leader in golf course equipment, golf clubs, balls. And so how do you spread the game? Well, you create golf courses. And so Tom Bendelow was credited with over 600 golf courses to his name by the time he died. He was from Scotland, and he was pretty much, he could do everything. So he was a golf professional. He was a greenkeeper like Gordy. He also, obviously, golf architect, surveyor, constructor, builder. So that's really how they came over. Guys like Mike they weren't just sitting in the golf shop or teaching lessons or helping out at the club. And looking very good tonight. But they were literally 5 jobs in one. And so Tom Bendelow created your golf course in 1913. Came in and with the help of George Harrison and Ben Reed, who were 2 members who helped construct the course, and then George Leaf, who was your first professional. They laid out the 9 holes, and it wasn't 1 or 18. It basically started at 2. So 2, 3, 4, and then over to 16, and then there were a couple other holes out there on 12, and then 13, 14, 17. So you still have 7 holes out there from the original 1913 layout, which is very unique. Here it talks a little bit more about Tom Bendelow. We found some really good articles from the Evening Sun, which is obviously the Baltimore Sun now, from July 3rd, 1914. That's when it opened. That was the first date golf was played, was July 4th, 1914. It talks a little bit about Green Spring Valley Hunt Club, which will be ready for use tomorrow. There's a big celebration planned with fireworks. Which was great. And then obviously from the American Golfer, this list, this is how we found this out. I only found this probably 3 months ago during a deep dig, but Green Spring Valley Hunt Club, right here it says, Tom Bendelow, the Spalding expert, has laid out nearly 30 courses this year, besides making additions and improvements to many more. So this was in the American Golfer in December 1914. That was a seminal find really in our research, because when I first came here and walked the golf course, I looked on the website. You know, nobody really knew anything about your heritage or history. I always thought it was the 2 men, the two members. That's still, I think, what's on your website. But now we have figured out that you have a pretty good name attached to your history. So after Tom Bendelow lays out the 9 holes, golf picks up steam. And it's the late 1920s, 1929. We hire here at Green Spring Herbert Strong, who was pretty much at the top of the class of golf architects. Locally, he did Woodholm, Country Club of Maryland, and then some other courses you might be familiar with, Canterbury in Ohio, Saucon Valley in Pennsylvania, Engineers in New York, some really high-class golf courses. So he came in, and he reconstructed all your greens. So we're not really sure if your greens had died the year before. You know, we're not really sure what the whole sequencing was of why he was brought in, but obviously he was at Country Club of Maryland in 1925, so 4 years before he was here, and then he was working out at Woodholm kind of in the same time period. So he was local. People obviously saw what he did at Country Club of Maryland and with that hilly topography, and they liked what he did, and he came in, and what we see, if we see Herbert Strong out there, I can picture, so say 3 green. Do we know how it falls off on the back very sharply? That is a distinct trait of Herbert Strong. So they are still beautiful, you know, essence of Herbert Strong out there. There are still some traits of his out there. Right of 4, the back of 4. So that 4th green just falls off like a stair step. That is a distinct trait of Herbert Strong. Here is how I did find this as well. I found this almost simultaneously in 3 months ago. Valley Club plans change, 10th hole to be added at Green Spring course. And then it mentions Mr. Reed and Thompson, and then Herbert Strong in here too. Yep, right there, Herbert Strong was laid out. So he came in, and then this was in the Evening Sun again, the Baltimore Sun, February 20th, 1930. So it discusses the work that was done the fall before, so 1929 fall. And then here's a great advertisement from Herbert Strong. He had the 1920 U.S. Amateur at Engineers, and then the 1919 PGA, which is going on right now at Bethpage. So he was a big name. He was a top 5 in the industry. Then our next step in the evolutionary process of your golf course is when we go to 18 holes from 9. We really actually had 10 holes because Herbert Strong added 1 in 18, and then they left a hole that was out there on 12. So you actually played 10 holes from 1929 to 55. which is rather unique. So then the club brings in the seminal architect of the era, Robert Trent Jones. He was at the peak of golf architecture in the 50s. And how do we know that? He was working at Augusta National at the same time he was working here. And so some of his notes to the club mention how much time he spent in Atlanta, which is pretty ironic. They were taking up a lot of his time. But here I talk a little bit about 1946, the Masters called him. His mark that he left at Augusta was flipping the 16th hole there. It used to be on the left side of the creek, a creek on the 16th hole, what now is a pond, and the green on the right side of the pond. So he literally flipped the green from the left side to the right side, where Tiger almost made that hole-in-one in the 4th round this year. So that's all Robert Trent Jones, and it was a huge, huge success. And his company from 1946 onward, after World War II, really skyrocketed. And so he came in, obviously, 1955, they signed the contract. 1956, they broke ground and spent the whole summer doing work on the golf course. And then they seeded everything, so it took quite a long time to grow in. The club didn't actually even open until October of 57. So you had a whole nother summer of growing in. I'm not sure, obviously Gordy wasn't at the helm, or it would have been opened a lot faster. But these are some great stuff here from Robert Trent Jones. He talks about a lot about what he was going to do here, and then he gave 4 sketches, which is very unique. I've seen it at a couple other Robert Trent Jones courses, but this is pretty inspiring and great to just see what he was thinking. This is your 8th hole. It says number 12, but this is your 8th. You can see the bunker on the left, pond front right. Notice no bunkers behind the green. We'll get to that later. So here we go back. Now I'm going to backtrack just a little bit just to walk you through the evolution, and we'll move real quick on this. So here is your original golf course. This is a 1927 aerial before Herbert Strong came in 29. So this is your original golf course. Starting on 2 was number 1, then 3, then 4. This is the little 10th hole that went up the hill. See this green right here? It's a square little green, almost, it's pretty much where 5T is, just behind 5T and 16T up on the hill. So it was a direct, uphill shot, which was obviously pretty tough. Then they played 16, and then out across the road on 12, then 13, 14, and 17. Here's the clubhouse, right down here. These are the golfing, the clubhouse grounds. Here's the railroad track that we still see, the Pennsylvania, the B&O, going right through your golf course. Notice 1927, there are no golf holes 1 and 2, or 1 and 18. Nothing, that's an open field. So that's when Herbert Strong came in. Here's 1952, and we see the 2 added holes down here, 1 and 18. So then, this is 1952. This is a great aerial to kind of keep us on track with the lineage, because notice here there are no Robert Trent Jones holes. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4 in their same exact order. And then 16, again that hole where 12 is, 13, 14, 17, 18. It was actually pretty cool layout. Oh, and notice that mystery hole that was going up the hill is gone. Obviously, for a reason. Here we have 1957, and we see construction actually taking place. So there's the 9th green, current 9th green. There's the current 11th green. There's hole 5, cut directly out of the woods. Notice how big the green is. Massive. And then we have 6. There's 6 green, and the bunker's starting to take shape. See, this is what I actually truly believe. We have a picture here in 1957. So this is probably summer, because everything's leafed out. So this is probably summer of 57. And there's a reason why it didn't open until October. I think there was continual washouts, because we can see these runnels throughout the golf course. And so I think 1957, I haven't looked at the annual guides or anything for rainfall, but I guarantee that was a really bad year, probably just like last year. And construction was very slow. And then the seeding was probably haphazard. So here we go to 64, and we notice, we have 1 and 18 down here, and the original holes. Here are the RTJ holes that he added. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 to over the creek, and then 15. Again, notice how big these greens are. It's a theme we're going to get back to. But beautiful, beautiful. This is 1964. Look at how much of this was still pretty much farmland, valley farmland, without any big trees, right of 6, left of 11. Look at all the pine trees here, left of 9. They're really just needle points. Then we get into 1989, and we see that 25-year change. Notice the tree growth, the shrinking of the greens, the shrinking of the fairway corridors. Golf, it was meant to be hard in the 80s and 90s. That was what was in vogue. Little did we know we were constricting our property and making everything look like tunnels. So here we are, 2015. Look at the circular small greens that we have just 3 years ago here at Green Spring Valley Hunt Club. This is a really fantastic aerial that we've highlighted because note the small, narrow fairways. And we'll go back here to 57. Look at how big this green is. It's double the size. Double the size. Literally touching the bunkering. 18, massive. If that's a thing for 18. Look at the constriction. So again, 17 was square and much bigger, maybe 8 feet on all sides. Same with 3. Same with 4. The look of the corners are all gone. And 18, look at how much smaller that is. And we have expanded that since 2015. Now we get into, this is where I'll get into really the master plan. I think I'm allowed to unveil this now. Yeah. Yeah. So this is what I was hired to do, to come up with a plan for the future, for the next 10, 15, 20 years, so we can see progress at Green Spring Valley Hunt Club. What are the main goals that I want to really achieve here? I want to get us back to your true heritage. We don't want to defend par off the tee. We want to defend par at the green. Because if you think about it, if you hit every fairway in regulation and every green in regulation and then you 2-putt, half of your strokes are on the green. Say it's a par 72, and we hit every green, 18 greens in regulation, 36 putts. That means half of the game is on the putting surface. Dave Pells, who's a renowned teacher of the game and short game guru, he's calculated that in golf, 77.2 of your shots are within 130 yards of the green. So what does that say to me as a golf architect? 22% of golf is off the tee. So why do I want to make golf so hard and have the fairways constricted, trees everywhere, bunkers everywhere off the tee, when I should be really defending that 77% of golf inside 130 yards? Another big portion is, the game is taking too long. We can't attract anybody my age or younger. My friends, they just want to go play public golf because it's easy and fast. Well, it's not really fast, but they hop in the cart, they drink a beer. Golf is meant to be enjoyed walking, playing quickly, playing in 3.5 hours. In Scotland, when the game came over from Scotland, in the early 1900s, they would play in 2.5 hours. We wouldn't spend all this time looking for golf balls. The bane of golf. You hit it out there, and it's underneath the tree. It's behind a white pine. You can't find the ball. The guys on the tee are waiting. It's an arduous slog now. Another thing is you're in a valley, obviously. It's a wet golf course. A major component of my plan, which you can see when you thumb through the magazine, is drainage. I want to put an extensive amount of drainage on your practice facility, so it's never closed, so we don't lose revenue. So we're allowed to hit balls whenever we want. And then obviously on holes 4, the bottom of 3, 16, 15, your valley holes, we want to put extensive drainage in, so then we can allow carts out every single day. And then cart revenue, we bring in more money to the club. And then what happens when guys play? So many clubs like Charlotte Country Club, where I've worked for a long time, they have about 27 to 30 days a year where they lose cart revenue. Well, what happens is that cyclical, where you lose that cart, but then you lose the golfer, and then you lose the meal, and then you lose the F&B, the food and beverage. So it's a major, major windfall for the club when the golf course is shut down. And then especially when the practice facility is shut down, because then you don't even show up to the club. Another big item, forward tees and champ tees. So elasticity. I want to give your course more elasticity so we can play it further up and we can host a Maryland Amateur and play it back, for the guys like Arthur. But forward tees, I noticed a huge discrepancy. When I started laying out the golf course, it just felt so long. It felt so long from the forward tee. And so again, we don't want to defend par off the tee. We don't want everybody to hit driver 3-wood. My father is 67, and I play with his group once a year, and every time they play the wrong tees. We get up there, they play 6,100 yards, they're hitting 5 woods into half the par 4s, and they're disgruntled, and it takes 5 hours, and at the end of the day, why are we coming back next week? It's ironic. I go, guys, why don't we move up to 5,500 yards? And then you have that 8-iron, that 9-iron, that wedge into that par 4, like you used to. Wow, they're not white. Those tees aren't white. Well, guess what? I propose taking the colors off of tees and just having a number system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're all black. They're all white. I've done that at clubs like Charlotte Country Club, where at Charlotte they're all black balls, and there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on there. And so you're just playing a number. It's not color coded. It doesn't give you that odd feeling when you go and it's a gold tee. And then I've seen at other clubs where they make the champ tees red and it's still odd. So no colors really for me. And I think that will help. That will help, again, speed the game up, make it more fun. We want to have a more fun game out there. So here is a little bit of what I just spoke about. Widening fairways to the original shapes and sizes found on those past aerials. So it's not just something I came up with on my own. It is reverting to the past, because what happened in the 1920s, the game boomed. And why did it boom? Because you could hit it out there. It was very tough, but it was fun. It was very competitive. If you were a good athlete, you were a good golfer. But it wasn't looking for the golf ball, all day, and it wasn't plugging it in the fairway out there. So obviously wider fairways, wider playing corridors opens up the wind. When the wind is blowing, that helps defend the golf course as well. Expanding greens to their past original shapes. People, I get the number one question. I'll sit down on a flight next to some guy who plays golf. Oh, what do you do? Oh, you're a golf architect. Great. My guy came into my course and he wanted to make all the greens bigger. Isn't that easier? Actually, you can put the flag sticks closer to the corners, and you can have new flag stick locations out there. So if we've played here for 30 years, guess what? Maybe next year you'll have a new flag stick location you've never seen. So it'll pique your interest. It will make you want to come back. Again, finding better tee locations. So not just shorter, but we want to find better tee locations, maybe on a little perch, somewhere with a better angle, maybe open up a better vista. Beauty is a part of this game too. Aesthetics are a major part of this game. We're out in nature. We're enjoying ourselves. You want to have beautiful views. And so when you cut down some trees and you have a tree management plan and you open things up, you see those beautiful views across your valley. That is major. Also, when you open it up a little bit, you have better turf, healthier turf. It's not so thin in the roughs where you get that hard pan lie. Or roots. The roots are brutal out there. I've seen a lot of them. So anyway, I don't want to just expand your fairways just to expand them and then it costs more to maintain. a lot of the leading edges of your fairways, what happens when you add a forward tee closer to the fairway, you then can cut off 30 or 40 yards of that fairway. So we're then saving money, because then we can widen it out a little bit, but we shorten 30 or 40 yards off, so we save fuel, we save manpower hours, we save fertilizer and herbicides. That's a major part you'll notice if you thumb through. There's probably 6 holes out there where I've shortened the fairway, but only where I've added tees. So the carry, there's not a forced carry. Obviously, I talked about tree management a little bit for wind, air movement, sunlight, beautiful views across the property. And then also addressing the drainage systems, to keep the practice facility open. And then capitalizing the last thing, and usually the main thing, proper bunker placement. So when you get your tees at the proper lengths and you have that elasticity, then you can look at the proper bunkering where it doesn't affect only the lesser skilled players. So there are bunkers out there for guys like Arthur, but then there are also bunkers out there for the 10 and 15 handicap. So one thing I do want to talk about bunkers as I get into my plan is the older architects who I've learned from and studied from my entire career, and everything that I think about and everything that I put into and instill in your golf course, it all goes back to it's a game, and every single person here who plays golf should have a challenge out there. And so sometimes I will leave a handful of bunkers out there at the 180-yard mark, the 220, the 250, because I don't want it to just be a driving range for the player who hits it 200 yards. If you don't want a hazard out there to skirt by or carry or just lay short of, then go to the driving range, because that's what you do at the driving range. You don't think, you turn your brain off, and you just hit. So I want everybody, every class of player, to have a challenge out there. And so I get a lot of blowback sometimes at clubs where they say, well, you have a bunker there, which we'll see, like number 7. Oh, it's only 200 yards off the tee. Well, that's their first actual, carry or hazard off the tee that they have to negotiate. So the first 6 holes weren't too bad for them. But I want to challenge every class of player, make it interesting for everybody. So here we'll get into it. I will only highlight 9 or 10 holes because I don't want to keep you all from getting too hungry and thirsty. So I'll move through this pretty quickly. But we'll start on hole number 2 because this is, there's obviously a lot of change, but there's not a lot of change. And so I'll highlight that throughout these holes. So obviously we see the teeing complex. The tees are great. There's variety. The forward tee is up plenty. There's no room to go back. The road is right there. So the teeing grounds are fine. The cart path works. The fairway is pretty good. I just want to expand the fairway a little bit down the left just to open it up. Only 3 yards. There's not much change. At the green, however, this is where I got a little more creative. What happens here is these bunkers on the left side are continually eroded and washed out every single time you get a rain event over a ½ inch. So Gordy's crew probably spends about 300 to 400 man hours pumping out these 2 bunkers on the left. So one thing that I thought would be a huge boon to number 2 is, look, we play number 1. It's a very difficult starting hole. It's long, it's a small green, it's a steep green, there's a lot of character on 1. 2, I didn't want to beat you up too much. So, because there's plenty of golf out there. One thing that I found in the last couple years that's really been in vogue is short grass, bent grass around greens. It gives you more options. If you hit down the left now, in my plan here, we will expand the green, but this will be bent grass runoff on the left, about 15 feet out, in place of those bunkers. So it'll slightly come off the green and go down about 2 or 3 feet, and you'll see the whole creek behind, and it'll be a beautiful look. But it'll also be intriguing, because if you miss that green just left, it'll carry your ball further away from the green, and then you'll have a decision to make. Do I take my 60-degree out? Do I hit a hybrid? Do I putt it? Hopefully you putt it. I always do. Doesn't work out all the time. But that, I think, is a great change. And then we just put the bunker back on the right to guard the hole a little bit, to give you a little interest, because most players flare it to the right. Won't be a super deep bunker. The green lays low on the ground. But a nice easing your way in to the golf round, because 3, 4, 5, we know what comes next. Speaking of 3, so 3 is a fantastic golf hole that obviously dates back to 1913. So does 2. But 3, I think, is maybe one of the crown jewels here at the club. I love 3 from A to Z, everything about it. You have a fantastic championship tee already back there. I just want to bring I guess it's the 3rd tee over away from the creek. So I want to bring that over and line that up with the other 3 tees. Because what happens is when you're on the left side of the creek, you hit out here and your ball immediately runs to the right rough. Because everything, your angle, you're hitting out and everything goes right. And so that is the poorest angle and actually the hardest shot on the golf hole. So I want to bring that out, line that up with everybody else, give them an opportunity, move them up about 10 yards, give them opportunity to then hit it up here a little further and accomplish this hole. One thing I did notice, though, the hole is lacking. There's so many par 4s out here and original holes that lack fairway bunkers. 1913, very rudimentary. It's a great green, but I wanted to defend it a little bit on the left. The hill there asks for a bunker. How did bunkers come to fruition? Obviously, sheep would lay in the hillsides in Dornoch and Scotland, and the wind would blow over them, and they would burrow in the sides of hills, and a bunker would be exposed. This is a fantastic location set right in the hill. The bunker would look fantastic there. Really give you some challenge off that tee. Of course, you can hit it down the right side like you always have. We're widening the fairway a little bit, obviously, so 5 or 6 yards on both sides to give you a better corridor so you can negate that bunker and go around the bunker. Again, maybe the largest green expansion on the golf course. There are 10 and 12 and 14 feet there in the back left corners, in the ears, I call, back right, back left. This is how we defend par for the future when you have that Maryland Open, Maryland Amateur. You know, we put the guys all the way back there, and you put the pin back right or far back left on a Sunday. That defends the hole. For regular play, we can still put the pin anywhere we like on the green, and we can always move up the tees if the wind is howling. So we have a little more elasticity there on 3. 5 is probably another, it's a bigger change because I feel like 5 has the most room to be aesthetically pleasing to the eye and then also a great golf hole. When I first walked the golf course, kind of how I was introduced to you all here is I popped in one day and just visited Mike and just wanted to see the course. I'll do that frequently when I'm driving through a location and I haven't seen a golf course. And so Green Spring was one of the only ones in Baltimore, along with Rolling Road, maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I hadn't seen. So I walked the golf course and I was continually disappointed with the opportunities that weren't capitalized on here. So I got the 5 and I said, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. I have to be candid. I'm paid to be candid here. But what we have at 5 is a great green with a little knob in the middle, a lot of character, but from the tee, you don't understand what's there. There's nothing that pops to the eye. It's benign and odd. It really is odd. We've done great tree removal. You know, Gordy and his crew have really cleared it out, opened it up, allowed the airflow back there. We've had better turf health. But I want to, again, fit those bunkers in the landform. You have a beautiful ridge there that runs literally like this at a beautiful angle. And so I want to strategically kind of place these bunkers at an angled play to the tee. So when you're standing on the tee, you think that bunker is still greenside, but it sits in the hill, and then you can carry it and run it onto the green. So you can use and utilize the landforms. Some people say this is going to be a lot easier. We'll see. We're going to expand it quite a bit as well. But I think when you open up the right side and people say, oh, I can just hit it anywhere on the right, what ends up happening is you flare it just a little bit, and then you get stuck on that hillside. So I want to open up some of those things, and I think this would be a fantastic golf hole. Visually, when people would get the 5, they would be floored of how visually striking that golf hole would be. Another change here, moving on to 7. This is probably the overall biggest change, but again, there's just something not quite right with 7. It's almost like during construction in 1955, 56, 57, when RTJ was laying out this golf hole, he found the best golf hole out there from 150 yards in, but they didn't quite regrade the landing area properly. So in my opinion, you can hit anything you want out there, and you have to get by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar there on the corner. And then if you negate the big swatting hand, everything just runs directly right and into the rough. And then what happens is you end up with a 200-yard shot into the most difficult green, the most simple in the middle, the big bunker on the right, 20, 30 feet of elevation change. It's a brutal golf hole. So I want to open up the left side, take down Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Open up the fairway, and I want to slightly regrade this area. So this would probably be the most amount of work out there from a contractor standpoint or my standpoint in the bulldozer. Everything that goes so hard this way, I want to slightly cut in here and change, instead of the golf hole being like this, I want to change the axis a little bit so the left side receives golf balls, so it doesn't deflect everything further away from the golf hole. Because the inherent strategy, what goes on 7? There is zero strategy right now because you have a big tree, no bunkers, so really the play is to hit a big slap hook around there, and you're still not really rewarded. So I want you to challenge the left side and try to go down the left and have a bunker down there that is visible. And the closer you get to the bunker, the more you're rewarded for a shorter line into the golf hole. The more you go away from the bunker, you're down in the rough 200 yards away. So obviously bunkering the golf hole on the outside wouldn't make any sense because that would just be a catcher's mitt out there and then make that a harder golf shot. So I want to challenge you down the left, reshape that a little bit, and then I think you have the best golf hole on your property. One more thing though, I want to open up the approach, open up the backboard effect on the green, because what happens there as well is I'm not a huge fan of if you hit a really great shot in there and it just goes over and you get stuck on that downhill lie just off the back edge with an impossible shot. I'd rather reward the golfer and say, look, the golf hole is hard enough. If you can hit a good one out here and then get it up here and it runs through, I want it to run through and kind of backboard back onto the green. So you have a backboard. You utilize the land. Again, we use the slopes out here, how golf was meant to be played. Just like in Scotland, we use the land. 10, another striking hole here that could be, postcard worthy. I'm not changing much off of the tee shot landing area. I am taking out, there are dueling bunkers that kind of sit there where the second one I think is redundant and doesn't really come into play. So I kind of would just make that one hazard, widen the fairway greatly, expand it, run it all the way up to the green, and then shift the bunker in front of the green, shift those over and split them a little bit. That would look incredible with that perched green and 2 beautiful bunkers there on the right with fairway going up on the left. I think that, that is a vision I've had since 4 years ago when I first walked the golf course. I stood there, I said, well, this is an opportunity. So I think 10 could be spectacular. I also, again, for the Arthur Worthingtons and everybody else out there who, Brian Killifers, who can really hit it, we have a back tee across the road that stretches this golf hole and actually makes it a really fun golf hole. Correct. Oh, and that's a great point. So the bunkers, I do want to take out most of the bunkers behind greens, except for 6, and a couple others. This is 11. 11. Yep. I want to honor Robert Trent Jones and your heritage because he did instill those on golf courses. But I felt 10 was forced. It was a hanging bunker where you literally, if you got in it, you putted out of it. You got your putter, that was the best option. So I want to eliminate what I call a hanging bunker, where it just doesn't fit. 14, this is kind of an anomaly. This hole was always a little awkward in my mind. In the future, I'd love to acquire some land and make that an incredible golf hole.
Burn the house.
Yeah, that would be, this is your one kind of, the one hole I feel that's a little bit weak still. The good thing is the green is incredible. It's probably your steepest green that we might have to modify a little bit to put some pin locations on. And you obviously have the water in front and the downhill lie from 120 and in. So the hole has its merits. What I do want to do is add a forward tee, because I felt like from back here, the forward tee player was penalized awkwardly, where they would hit a great drive just to the top of the landing area and then have 160 in over water, hitting 5-wood. So I'd rather move it up 40 yards, allow the forward tee player to hit it down to the 180, 90 yard, and then have a wedge in there and give it a go. Obviously, the back tee doesn't change much. I did take out the cart path on the right, and I'm going to swing it around to the left. That way, in the future, when you're hitting into 13 and you spray one, people aren't sitting in carts there. It just takes out a little liability for the future. That's a minor item, but I think that would really help get you over here on the left and then get you driving down the left side and not driving out in front of 13 and people coming up 13. This kind of necklace of bunkers, I call, is on the old aerials from 1927, the Herbert Strong, the Tom Bendelow. So they had a series of linear bunkers separating the two holes, and the holes were literally joined. The fairways literally just ran right up to the bunkers. So that's what I wanted to incorporate. I wanted to widen 13. You can kind of see over here, especially if you look in your booklets. And then widen 14, because 14 is so linear and just one-dimensional. That's one thing that I talked about earlier, is when you have linear corridors, there's only one way to win on the golf course, and that's straight. I want to open up the playing corridors so it gives you more angles off the tee into the greens. If we have a back left, we have a new back left pin location on 14. The goal is to get as close to the bunkering as you can so you have a great angle in, so you're hitting up that slope. If you nonchalantly flare one down the left and you're in the rough, you have a really tough shot. So we want to bring angles and width back into play here. Another reason why I opened up that fairway.
Talk about the trees behind that green.
Correct.
We'll go back there.
Yes. So we see on other circumstances here at the club, hole 11, there are no trees behind the green. Why do we have arborvitae lined up behind the green? I actually think it attracts your eye and detracts from the golf hole. You see the golf car, or you see the car coming, and then you don't see it for about half a second, and then you see it again. So I don't think we're accomplishing much. So I'd really like to see those go, and then again, you see across the landscape, you see across the golf course. I don't think the road is a bad thing. I think the roads add a slight bit of charm to your golfing, your golf experience. I've had this discussion before with golf courses, even down in Australia, where on Royal Adelaide, there's a train track going right through the golf course. And I remember being there on the second hole, and the train came by, and oh, I'm so sorry about the train, please just ignore it. I go, I think that's one of the cooler things I've seen in golf. I think that's
Whistling Straits.
Right, Whistling Straits. I mean, there's hundreds of different options out there, examples. But I think we should, leave the road, take down arborvitae, obviously make it a highlight of your golf course. It's an intimate, beautiful neighborhood back there. It's a beautiful neighborhood feel. It's something I think you should be proud of instead of hiding. 15. So 15 is another head scratcher where when I first walked here, I couldn't figure out what was going on with this pond at the green. It really, really befuddled me, where I had literally two water hazards back to back, which I've still in my career never seen at any other golf course. So I do want to remove that water hazard and make that fairway wrapping up to the far right side of the green. I think what happens when you take out the water hazard, it will then bring in the creek a lot more because you won't be so worried about the pond, and you might get a little loose with your grip, run it over there. But what's happening here is I want to get that fairway as close as we can to the water hazard. So it brings it actually into play. So you don't hit a fade off the tee and it stops in the rough before actually getting into the hazard. It is a wider fairway, which is good. We still retain the bunker on the left, and really that's a great green as well. You know, that green defends par plenty. But again, you have this beautiful natural water feature that so many other clubs would grovel to have. Let's highlight the creek. Let's make it a beautiful, meandering brook going through the property, and let's take out that kind of random pond that's been added. I think this, again, it's man-made.
It's fake.
Yeah, it's fake. There's really no reason for it. It doesn't help drainage at all. It's above the creek level. I think, again, having this wide opening and all bent grass, again, you'd be walking down the fairway and it would look spectacular. Again, a lot of these are for aesthetics. We're making your golf course more visually, aesthetically pleasing. So when you bring guests over from Elk Ridge and Caves and other golf courses, they go, wow, your golf course is so beautiful. This is such a beautiful valley. They come in and they want to come back because they love the experience. 16.
Bunker out of 15 in the back?
Yeah.
Right, correct. So that's another hanging bunker that sits there kind of out of sorts. It doesn't match the landscape. It's really just odd in golf architecture. And so the ones that do fit the landscape, like behind 11, like behind 6, I've retained. Left of 8, I've retained those that actually fit into the landforms. So I felt like if you went over the green, I think a chip from the rough is actually harder than the sand. So I did remove that. And it's unsightly when you're on 4 green, 15, 16T, 5T, looking back down. I want you to see a beautiful, green complex there and not an odd bunker sitting up above the putting surface. 16, so 16, again, talking about hard golf and why we're all in the wrong, train of thought in golf in general. Hard was cool in the 80s. And so obviously we put 3 bunkers in and it was nearly impossible. It was about 10-yard gap there in between bunkers, which you still have. And so I want to strategically place these bunkers, stack them a little bit so you can navigate your way around them. So this is that bunker, that's still in play for Arthur and guys. Some people said, oh, are all our bunkers going to be at 260, 270? This bunker is out there at 285. So plenty of room, and we can always play off of 5, which we do from time to time. We can always play off 5 and it'd be longer for the future. But I just wanted to make 16 a little less penal off the tee. You get to the green's, again, an upturned saucer that's impossible to keep your ball on. So the golf hole's plenty hard, especially with the creek on the right. And I do want to take out some of the trees on the right and spade them to other to other areas on your golf course, say left of 8, where the road is and the ugly, probably your least attractive part of the golf course, where the Green Spring Valley Road is. So I think we have an opportunity to repurpose these trees that are, these little oaks and stuff that are growing down here. We'll still leave the big guy and a couple other big ones that'll continue to grow. But I do want to open up, again, that fairway, defend par at the green. It's a great golf hole. Then your practice facility. This is probably number 1 on my list. As you can see, these lines and these basins are 6-inch drain tile, 12-inch drain tile. This should help remove all the water that stands out there and keeps the ball picker from going around out there, and take it out into your tributary there that kind of starting to become a creek. And this would help keep your practice facility open year-round. Or maybe not year-round, but at least for 10, 11 months. And then I also just want to expand the bunker there and rebuild the bunker. I feel like that gets so much play. There's so much sand splash out of there. I felt like that was probably your poorest bunker on the golf course when it should be your best. So just rebuilding that bunker so you have a really nice bunker to play out of and practice would be a big home run. Now I want to get into, for time's sake, I don't want to talk too long, but I want to talk about, everybody's going to ask, obviously, how much, when, what kind of bunker style. Bunker style is probably the biggest question other than how much. And so what I want to kind of talk about is, again, your heritage. I'm recirculating here back to the start of the discussion where here's Herbert Strong, and this is his bunker style. This is Engineers in New York. This is Rogers Forge, which is Country Club of Maryland, the 13th hole, the downhill, beautiful downhill hole. And then this is Saucon Valley. Notice every photo that I have in my library from Herbert Strong, they are all grass-faced bunkers with flatter bottoms. So you originally had flatter bottoms, grass-faced bunkers out here after 1929, after he rebunkered your golf course. Robert Trent Jones was a little different, where this is Wilmington Country Club, where I worked at and redid the South Course there in 2007, Robert Trent Jones golf course. A little more grass-faced, some sand flash, Congressional here, a little more sand flash. And this is Hazeltine. So he did Hazeltine in 1962, 5 years after you. Wilmington, 2 years after you in 1959, and then Congressional in 1961, 3 years after. So I tried to pick golf courses that were done in your time period to kind of get back to Robert Trent Jones style. A lot of people think huge sand flash, big noses and capes, that came later in Robert Trent Jones style in the 70s and 80s when really the Peachtree and Augusta were really in vogue, and he started really putting a big sand flash on his bunkers. So I wanted to get the correct period for your golf course and kind of get us back to that feel. So what I propose is a blend of the Robert Trent Jones style and the Herbert Strong style. So not fully flat bottomed where your ball is going to run right up to the front edge, and not fully sand flashed where the bunkers are going to cost a massive amount of money to continually maintain because we're in that river valley, this creek valley. So I'm doing a hybrid here where this is Canterbury, Herbert Strong, and notice a little flatter with just a little bit of flash for sand visibility. So you see the hazards from the tee. Very aesthetically pleasing to the eye, but also not continually washing out. This is Portland Country Club where I redid the bunkers in 2017. Notice again, more of the grass face, some antiquity, character, honors your heritage, your old, beautiful club, but more of a flatter bottom where sand isn't washing out continually, but you still have that 18 to 24 inch sand flash at the bottom. So when your ball runs into that bunker or hits the face, it deposits the ball 3 or 4 feet from the face of the bunker. So we're not continually up against the face. So 1 for playability, 2 for obviously maintenance, 3 for aesthetics. I think the look would be fantastic. This again is Portland Country Club. Notice the antiquity and character. This is what is lacking out there. Everything's generic, looks like a saucer. They are worn out, and I mean, quite frankly, it's like an old house that we need to come in and put a new roof on, new water heater, new kitchen, and refurbish, but leave the exterior, the bones. Leave the beautiful old Pennsylvania fieldstone, facade, but fix some of, the bigger main issues. So this is more of the proposed style, again, that 18 to 24 inch flash. I think when people would come here for a first time as a guest, they'd be floored. Like, wow, okay, I'm at an old club. I feel like these are old bunkers. The greens are expanded. Look at all the character oozing out of this, property. And that is pretty much it, because I know it's long-winded. What's that?
Halfway house.
I know. We're going to kind of talk about it. You got yours?
I got one of those. You may need that.
Thank you. Yes, I think so.
Thank you very much. Questions? I know I've got one over here. Mrs. Corbin.
am excited to see such wonderful plans. I live happily on the 4th Fairway, which is what we really call the water hole. As you made many references to the water issues over the years, over the last 75 years, as why you think the club didn't open when it was supposed to, and the hours that they used, spending pumping out the bunkers and this, that, and the other. You said that you proposed putting in drain tiles at the practice range that should help. I guess my question is, Tyler, has a stormwater management company of any kind been consulted? Because the water issue is so severe, and I actually had 2 stormwater management companies come walk our property, walk out onto the 4th Fairway yesterday, as recent as yesterday, one several months ago. And the issues are great. And if I don't play golf, but I do walk the golf course. I enjoy the golf course. I also make my livelihood selling real estate, and I can't sell a floodplain, so you're not going to be able to sell a wet golf course if people can't play. And I guess that's my biggest concern, is if the water issue in general isn't addressed in a professional engineering way. Digging trenches across the little path along the side of the 4th Fairway, which was just done recently. I took pictures of that today, and you can see it's not working. So that's my question.
That's a fantastic question. So you have a great point there. I propose drainage, but I don't install it. We do have professional companies that come in and that only do drainage for a living. So they will literally survey the whole area and put in drain tile. There's a thing called XGD systems, which they put in 2-inch slit drainage on 5 and 6 foot spacings. So it looks like a football field when it's done, but they drain out at 1% to the creek. Here's a thing that I've thought about that we've done in the past. Sometimes when you get a flat floodplain like you've discussed, and it's lower actually in the fairway than the creek, what happens is we put in pipes at 1%, and the water falls down and it goes into those pipes, and then we put a circulating pump at the end of, say, like a wet well down by the creek that constantly pumps the water out from that catch basin into the creek, and then water never comes back up that pipe. So there are many different ways where we've mitigated floodplains like you've just discussed on 4. So I'm extremely confident that if we get the right companies in place and we spend the adequate money, that is the one thing. We don't want this to come back and bite us. We want to do this right and do it right once. And that's why I'm here. That's why the committee and you as a club has hired professionals, because we like to do it once and we like to do it great and make you proud. Go ahead.
Just an aside,
Yep.
that from the conversations that I've had with Ecotone and with Blue Water, both of which the water is not all just your problem, because it's coming from
The
West
development,
End.
all the development.
And also Garrison Forest School. I mean, and so we as a community need to be involved in this together, because it's affecting not just the golf course or not just Chittenden Lane. It's affecting a much larger, the people from up at Caves Road, or you can see them out on the road hand digging the ditches. I mean, it's incredible, just in the last few weeks. And I don't think necessarily because of the climate change that this is, last summer was a one-time anomaly. Look at what we've had just in the last 2 weeks. So I'm done, but I do think that, I will feel a whole lot happier knowing that we can work this together again.
Correct.
Whatever I do is going to affect you.
Correct.
And whatever Garrison does is going to affect me and you. So if we do it as a group, and there are grants out there, there's federal money. And that creek is actually a Class C trout stream.
Right.
So, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to cost the members, you know, $1 dollars in assessments and this, that, and the other,
Right.
in terms of that portion of it.
I think, you know, in my time, I've never seen a more thorough back room. So the way that these guys have focused and put their effort into this, I think if we put the same amount of effort into drainage, I think we'll come out with a great product. Thank you.
You're so close to Linda, I should give question opportunity out here. Anybody? Oh, no, you missed your chance. Mr. Phelan.
Thank you, Mr.
Branow.
Linda. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good question.
Watch yourself. Linda, you probably walked more on this golf course than I did last year. And I appreciate your comments. I thought they were spot on. And I know, just from listening to, I've never met Tyler. When Arthur started talking, I don't know where Arthur is anymore. He kept pointing someplace. Hey, Arthur. When Arthur brought this up, talking about bringing in a golf course architect, and he mentioned your name, I didn't even know who you were. And I am duly impressed with what I heard here tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're taking something that is very dear to everybody's heart in this room, and really making a tremendous, I can't wait to study this thing, because it's the first time I've seen it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to study it, learn more about what you're doing, and potentially ask you multiple questions.
Yeah, that's okay. Normal, very normal.
So I am tickled that you're here this evening.
Thank you.
And the club is going to benefit from this greatly.
Thank you so much.
I did have a question for you, and I was told by Bo
Fantastic.
Jeez. I was told by Bo Jarrett to put my hand down earlier because Bob, which I missed his great introduction, I was told to put my hand down because no questions were to be asked until we finished. So in 1957, and I looked at the aerials at length with Arthur way back whenever we were first discussing this, and it appeared that I couldn't, in my mind, figure out if he changed the bunkers, Robert Trent Jones changed the bunkers of Strong. Not the bunkers, I'm sorry, the greens, the green complexes. And it didn't appear that it did to me, but have you been able to determine that he did? And on that note, I will sit down.
Thank you. Great question. What has happened is I've gone through all the RTJ archives. There are a multitude of notes and dialogue between you all, the club, and the leadership at that time, and Robert Trent Jones in his office. And what happened is at first, there was dialogue about blowing up everything, but they wanted to keep 9 holes open, and then it always came down to money. So they didn't want to spend the extra expense to do all 18. And so what ended up happening is they strictly just built the extra 9 and totally just kept this 9 open. And he didn't tinker with any bunkers or any greens. And so it's the best part is when I keep referring to my visit 4 years ago, the best part is when I walked 1, 2, 3, 4, I knew these were all greens because they're that beautiful perch up, pretty flat but still back to front. So when I saw RTJ on the scorecard, I didn't understand. Then I got the 5. I said, okay, yep, the first mound in the green, and then you get another mound in the green, and then another mound. But to answer your question, all original.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Hi, Tyler, I'm sorry, I came a little late. If this has already been addressed, forgive me.
It has.
I'm sure Peter has a lot of questions.
Yeah.
for I do. going to number 15, I was here when you reviewed 15, and I understand you're taking out the pond. But there have been a multitude of trees taken out on the right side as well. And there are now players that are specifically aiming for 16 fairway as opposed to 15 because it's a much wider area to hit. You can almost aim at the creek and if you hook it great if you slice it. It's a much easier approach from 16. Has there been any thought on how to protect that?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, sorry. You good? Is it? I thought it was going to be a double question there for a second.
Just one. I'll let Peter do the rest.
I was anxious to answer that, so I apologize for cutting you off. But that came up numerous times, especially with Arthur and I as we walked the golf course. As a player, I would think about that all the time. My sincere hope is that these trees continue to grow. There's a sycamore and a couple maples right there and an oak. So I am retaining these and hopefully they continue to grow. The good thing is that they're next to a creek, so they should have a plentiful water source and should really keep skyrocketing. I think the trees will be an aerial hazard. The other thing is I'd love to, in the future, I'm not opposed to adding a couple small trees along that right side. So when you stand on that tee, you can't just hit it directly right. And I think that will help a lot. I haven't put it on the plan because my first hope is, hey, let's watch these and evaluate. And in 5 years, 4 years, if these aren't growing fast enough, or if one comes down in a storm, and then it becomes wide open out there, then we can transplant some of these smaller guys who are 3 and 4 years old, put 1 or 2 right there along the path. So thank you. Great question.
Untitled Chapter. Two parts. One, first, this was phenomenal. Great job.
Thank you.
Which of the changes are you most excited about, and which were you most nervous to present because you thought it was a great idea but may see resistance?
That's fantastic. So, actually, when the club, Bob asked me to give one hole a couple months ago for the handout, and it's on the front of the handout. That's 5. And so there's a multitude of reasons real quick, and I'll just bullet point them. But 5 is your most odd hole from the tee, but it could be solved very quickly and very cheaply. So 5, when a club goes, Tyler, okay, you've given us this plan. What's next? I go, we should now create a strategic prioritized list and assign monetary amounts to that list, and then we can pick off from that list. And so 5 would be 3 new bunkers, some slight regrading. The green doesn't change much. It's some fairway sod. The tee stays the same. This is $19,000 versus some other holes where they might be 70. So for me, it's a massive bang for the buck. Visual, it'll be visually incredible from the tee, and play. It'll be a lot more fun to play for all handicap types. So that's my answer to your first question. That would be number 1 for me. The big guy is 7, the elephant in the room. I've been hoping those trees would fall down every winter. But 7 would be one where if you bring out a guest, they'd play 7 and they'd look back and they'd kind of look at you and be like, holy smokes, that hole is so good. That is by far the best hole on the property. And so I think 7 would be instantly into the top 18 in Maryland, tomorrow. Especially with, you have a back tee there across the road that kind of used to be a dual tee for 10, but what I didn't touch on, I strategically left out because I figured we'd bring it up, but my goal is to move that halfway house up to 10. So you have an incredible vista up there, and you can access it from 6, 10, and then 15. So you have 3 times you can hit that halfway house for those beers, all you guys out there. Those cocktails. But, revenue. Get the revenue up. Then we can do more bunkers now. But when you move that halfway house from 9, because you can't really play, or from 7, 2 behind 10 and 11 tee. You can't really play back here because that halfway house, if somebody came out of there and you were teeing off, it'd be a disaster. So I would never.
Why the bunker deep?
Why this bunker? What happens is I want to challenge every level of golfer, and I felt like so many holes out here, you just hit it with no thought if you're playing from a shorter set of tees. And so I wanted to give you a thrill. You know, the game is about excitement, and you know, so when you tee off from here and you're getting later in age, you know, my father's group, I think about them, you know, when I'm designing. Yeah. So I just wanted to give you something to think about. So you just don't get up on the tee, you turn your brain off, and you just hit. You know, I want every class of player to be challenged. But anyway, but to answer your question in a long diatribe, 7 would be maybe the most spectacular hole, because already from 150 and in, it's incredible. But from 150 back, it's maybe the worst hole on the course. So you have you know, it's expensive though. That's the only thing, is it would be we're talking, you know, that's your $70,000 or $80,000 hole there, fixing that. Next question.
For the tree.
Yeah, the tree we're hoping blows over, you know, and then you get insurance money. And, yeah.
Put gasoline on the bottom of the dog.
Yeah.
So can you give us an idea, percentage-wise, how bigger the fairways are? I mean, we think a lot around here about, especially kids growing up who play here, when the fairways are playing hard and fast, narrow fairways, small greens, your game travels, right?
Correct.
A lot. So I'm just trying to get a sense of how much bigger the fairways and greens going to be.
They're not major, you know, like this expansion would probably be 12 yards. You know, that would be a major one. But most of them, like 8's a small change. You know, maybe just a slight expansion down the left because we just removed some trees. 9, not much. 9 is great. You know, 10 is very minimal. 11, not much. So we're talking probably 14%, 15%. But then we're losing those fronts. You know, we're the leading edge. We're going to delete 40 and 50 yards off some of these holes. So it's going to be negated. And we're moving some tees back, and we're moving some tees forward. So giving that elasticity to the golf course. So I think when we get the drainage in, you know, this is a long-term, you know, this isn't an overnight master plan. This is a long-term 10, 15-year plan, a long-term vision. You know, I think when the fairways are firm and the greens are expanded and they're firm, even if the tees are up, again, that 77% of your strokes are inside 130. So I think that's how we defend it. Putting some fun flagstick locations out there in the corners. You know, 10, the next, you know, this one right here. Oh, putting a flagstick location like right back there, back right, but you've been moved up. Now you have an avenue for the higher handicapper to run it up here and then 2-putt, but the scratch has a bunker to avoid. He hits it here. He has a 100-yard shot. Now you have one that if you just chunk it a little bit, you're right in the bunker. So that's how we kind of defend for everyone, but make it playable for everyone.
Question. It's a long-term plan and you want to adapt or stage the changes hole by hole. How do you integrate the aged irrigation system into that long-range plan?
Oh, excellent.
That is, yeah. That's the best question tonight. There you go. That's why I was realistically hired, is because what happens at so many clubs, we call it, you get the cart before the horse. So you get an irrigation designer, you need irrigation, nobody thinks really about the golf course. The irrigation designer takes a Google aerial of your golf course and then lays out everything to your current golf course. All the pipes, everything. Then you hire a guy like me 5 years later, and I go, oh no, all this irrigation has to move. All those heads are put strategically to water the fairway, to water the greens, to water the tees. And so realistically, now that we have a plan, he takes my plan. I've already sent my plan to the irrigation consultants. They underlay it and then design the new irrigation system to the plan. to the future. So what happens is we haven't gotten the cart before the horse, and we are saving substantial amounts of money. So we are being very, very prudent and forward thinking.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you.
What, if anything, do you plan to do about cart paths?
Oh, that's a great question. So circulation pathways, cart paths, in my mind, I'm always thinking about where players enter and exit off the green. A lot of them, you don't have terrible areas here. I don't have hole number 1 up here, but in your booklets, hole number 1, I've separated the bunkers on the right, so the golfers all don't go like sheep to the front right and wear out that pattern. I want to disperse, foot traffic and car traffic, and so off 1, you're still going to park in the same spot, but now you have multiple routes onto the green. Car traffic, let's see, 2 doesn't really change, 3's fine. Oh, great. Yeah, there we go. I'll go back to 2. That's major here. So 2, when you're coming down 2, my first thought was when I walked the golf course was all I saw was cart path behind the green. All you see is that major artery going up the 5T where all the maintenance vehicles go, everybody uses. In one of my visits in January, I saw the skid steer continually going up and down that cart pathway. What I'd like to do, if you open up the booklets to, I guess it's the best probably area we can see here. Oh, actually, I'll get the master plan up. There we go. Okay. So the major changes are when you come off of 2 green, I delete that artery going behind 4 and up. So as you come to the crest of the hill, you see a beautiful stream and bunkering at 4, and you see 4's green. You don't see cart path going directly up behind the green. And then I want to add just a light fescue on that hillside. So when you're coming up, when you get to the crest on 2, you see this beautiful backdrop. Again, we're raising the aesthetic quality of your golf course, the visual impact. Now, when you come off 2, you just go right to 3 and out 3. When you come off 15 green, you go and then you go up to the front and then back to a turnaround up there. All the cart path is hidden. You don't see anything from 2 fairway. Then when you turn around, you go right back down to 16 fairway. Same with 10. I've added a cart path behind 10 green so you can access it from 6 to the new halfway house location. When you come up off 10 green, here's cart path that connects. So now Gordy's team can come out of the shop, take a left turn, go down 3. Get to 3 green 4. They take a right and they go out to the front of 16, up, and then they connect to 5. They go, and now you have cart path here in this wet part of the valley where there's no cart path. You have cart path that connects in front of 11, and then behind 10, they get to 6 without crossing any of the fairways. So now that gives them a route out to 6. So that is probably the biggest cart path change. And then, other than that, it doesn't change much at the tees here. That works pretty well. Other than that, that's probably about it. One more? Fake out.
Sorry, I think it's worth talking about the bunker on 6, even though it's not on your screen.
Okay, yep. Ooh, this is a good one. I left it out on purpose. That's one of those I just want to slide in there, No, okay, so 6. When I came to 6, and I walked the golf course so many times, I felt like 6 was so odd. The bunker sticks out of the landscape. It doesn't fit into anything. It's a big pimple out there that water kind of just runs around. And so I thought it was very, very poorly located, just very odd. The rest of the hole is gorgeous, and I'm not making any changes. But 6, I want to move the bunker up just across the low in the fairway so it sits in the landform. It might be a little bit out of play for most players, but I felt that 6 was so well guarded from 250 yards and in that, again, you know what? Let people hit it as far as they want down the hill. If they run it in the summer, it might go into that bunker. You know, that bunker probably will challenge 10% of the membership. But I also felt that, hey, if you're on this hole and you hit it in that bunker, it's automatically almost a 4-shot hole and you're going to have a bogey or double. So I just felt like it was overly penal from the tee shot. And again, I just don't want to take you out of the hole off the tee every time. You know, Bobby Jones used to say the greatest golf shot in golf, in the game of golf, is the recovery shot. So when you're playing a match and your buddy hits it in the trees and you hit it up on the green, you think you've got the hole won. He then somehow nicks it out of the trees to 2 feet and wins the hole. And we call that a Mongolian reversal with my friends. So you think you've won the hole and you've been flipped on your back. So what happens with that bunker on 6? There's no real way to recover from there and win the hole unless you hit it out 100 yards, then hit it up by the green, and somehow chip in for par. So I just felt it's just too penal, in my opinion.
Okay, can of worms.
Hey Tyler, we've talked about this. I was hoping that you could share with the group about widening fairways, taking some trees down. Is the course going to get easier?
Great question. I get that everywhere I go, Bo, where, you know, even tonight, you know, when I was speaking with a couple people already were noticing the wider, you know, playing corridors. I think we don't want to defend par off the tee, and then we want to bring back the angles out here. You know, make it 3-dimensional, where you can hit it down the left, you know, and utilize the wind one day, or you can hit it down the right because the bunker, say on, you know, to give you a great example, 8. So 8, why would we expand the fairway and make that easier off the tee? Well, I'm opening up on the left, so then it brings in those 2 ditches into play. But then also, if the pin's in the back right, I want you to hug that left side so you have a beautiful angle into that green. So that's a perfect example where width doesn't equal easiness or you know, a game that's just nonchalant off the tee. I think width gives options, and options are the zest of the golf game. Just different routes on different days, so it doesn't become a monotonous game out there.
One last question, going to Mr. Walden.
You talk a lot about removing trees, and this is the Green Spring Valley with a lot of water. The trees drink a lot of water.
Right.
Where are you adding any trees to help mitigate that?
Another good question. All along 8, I've proposed, you know, tree spade in at least 5, 6, 7 nice hardwoods, some oaks, bur oaks, red oaks, white oaks, along that left side. So then again, we screen the road, screen the houses. Potentially there, taking away some of those smaller trees from 15 and 16, maybe moving some up by 15T. I think we have a great opportunity to screen your boundary behind 3. You know, that's going to be a major issue in the future. Behind 17, you know, behind 2T. Those are all white pines that are pretty much at the end of their life expectancy, 40 years. And so those are all going to be dying soon. So I'd love to replant, especially behind 3. 3 is, there are a couple dead. And so again, you have that kind of odd look back there. So I think planting on your periphery is number 1. But out here, really, the goal is to plant the proper tree. You know, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, everybody thought maples were great, and they are great for 2 weeks of the year. But what people don't understand, they're great in the fall. They have really high surface roots, so they're a nightmare for Gordy's crew because they bounce around underneath that tree, and then it's continually dirt underneath the maples. And then they have that poor circular form where they look like lollipops. So we want things to look more natural out here. So I'm a massive fan of oak trees, you know, especially white oaks, black swamp oaks. I mean, there's 6 different oaks I'm a fan of. Sycamores. I think your sycamores are great.
What about water like river birds?
Right, river birches are great. Their bark's fantastic. You know, the white bark.
But those are the trees that actually
suck up water. Same with sycamores. Sycamores literally are probably, one of the bigger trees that sucks up the most water. But I wouldn't want, arboretum trees out here, like those lollipop maples, like a weeping willow, like Chinese maple, Japanese maple, stuff like that. We want to leave those at the arboretum and plant strategically for the future. So then we have, beautiful trees, especially around Gordy's shop. That's another great spot where those white pines are all coming down in the next 10 or 15 years. And they're already falling because they're so weak wooded. So I think that should help answer your question. The white pines on the left of 2, we could always tree spade an oak on the left there because those white pines will probably come down in the future. So just strategic planting where we see trees that are declining.
All right. Thank you very much, Tyler.
Thank you. I appreciate it.